The no pain, no gain myth is ruining runners over 40. I'm sure you've heard no pain, no gain. You've probably heard it your whole entire life. You hear it in the gyms, you hear it while you're on the trail running, you hear it in your head, you hear it every place. And if you're a runner over 40, I want to make a case today that this phrase is one of the most damaging ideas in running. Not just unhelpful, actively damaging. Look, research shows that 69% of masters athletes, that's runners over 40, attempt to push through the pain to maintain their training. 69%, almost 7 in 10 runners do this. And 85% of recreational runners will experience a running-related injury at some point in their running career. Look, those two numbers are not a coincidence. In this video, I'm going to break down exactly why the no pain, no gain mentality is the enemy of runners over the age of 40, and what it's doing to your body, and why it stops working after 40 in a way that you didn't see in your 30s, and what to do instead. Look, I've been running for over 10 years, and I've made one of these mistakes personally, and I'm still dealing with the consequences of some of them right now. This is what I wish someone had told me. Let me be clear about what the enemy actually is. The no pain, no gain mentality isn't about pushing through temporary discomfort. There's nothing wrong with that. Look, running is hard sometimes. Long runs are uncomfortable, and race day hurts. The enemy is the belief that suffering is the signal you're improving. That if a run was easy, if you finished it feeling good rather than wrecked, you wasted it. That belief drives recreational runners to do 3 specific things that cause serious damage over time. 1, they run too hard on what should be an easy day. Instead of generally recovering, they're training at a moderate effort that's too hard to recover from, and it's too easy to build real speed. And this is that gray zone I've talked about on this channel before. Look, you're in it when no run ever feels truly easy and no run actually feels really hard. Number 2, they ignore the pain signals. Research published by the U.S. Army Defense Health Agency is actually very clear. Misunderstanding the no pain, no gain concept leads to serious and chronic health conditions. Pain is your body's warning system. The no pain, no gain culture trains you to switch that warning signal off. And number 3, they don't recover properly. They see rest days as literally weakness. They see easy runs as wasted miles. And without real recovery, without days where the body actually repairs itself and rebuilds, the training doesn't compound. It just accumulates as fatigue. That is the enemy, not the effort, not the hard work, not the belief that suffering is always the right signal to follow. Now, here's why this mentality is particularly damaging for runners over 40, and why it may have felt like it was working in your 30s, even when it wasn't serving you well. After 40, several things change simultaneously in your physiology. And these changes mean the no pain, no gain concept and approach stops working in a way that it might have barely tolerated before. First, recovery takes significantly longer as you get older. Look, research on masters runners is clear about this. After a hard workout in your 30s, you might have been recovered by literally the next morning. I skipped my 30s when it came to running, so I have to go by what the research says. However, after 40, the same workout can leave your legs flat for like 3 days. The cellular repair mechanism slows down. Muscle damage from hard efforts takes much longer to resolve. I know that in a lot of ways, from my knees to my arms to my shoulders to my back to all of these things. And this means that a runner over 40 who trains hard every day isn't building fitness faster. They're actually accumulating fatigue that never fully clears. And Training on top of fatigue produces diminishing returns and increases injury significantly. Second is cortisol recovery changes. And what I mean by that is cortisol is your primary stress hormone. Every hard run will spike cortisol. After a normal training session, it returns to baseline within hours. But research shows that when training volume or intensity intensity continuously exceeds your body's capacity to recover, cortisol stays chronically elevated. And chronically elevated cortisol has real consequences, real fat storage, compromised immune function, poor sleep quality, and persistent fatigue. The runner who pushes through the no pain, no gain terms always slightly tired and living in a mind state of chronic cortisol elevation. And after 40, this happens faster and clears more slowly than it did before. Third is injury patterns change completely. And research shows that runners over 40 don't just get injured more often, they get completely different types of injuries from younger runners. Tendons, and connective tissue take longer to adapt to load. And for female runners over 40, hormonal changes during perimenopause directly reduced stiffness in tendons and ligaments, increased injury risk significantly. The no pain, no gain mentality that might have produced muscle strain in a 28-year-old produces a tendon injury or stress fracture in a 48-year-old. Look, it's the same approach. It's different and more serious consequence. And this is why understanding what changed in your body after 40 isn't optimal. It's the whole entire game. Let me talk about where most runners over 40 actually end up when following the no pain, no gain culture. It's called the gray zone. Literally, the gray zone, that's what you're training in. You're running kind of hard, not hard enough to feel like a real champ, like to feel like real quality session, not easy enough to actually recover, right? Every run sits in this uncomfortable middle ground that does the least useful thing in either direction. I was in the gray zone for most of my running life before I found the Maffetone method. I thought that if I wasn't breathing hard, I wasn't doing enough. I thought easy days were probably going to be wasted days. I needed to push harder, right? And the result was always I kept getting tired. I kept getting injured. And despite training consistently, my race times eventually dropped off and then stopped improving, and I got injured more. The gray zone is where the no pain, no gain mentality really drops runners, right? It feels like hard work because it's always somewhat uncomfortable, but it's producing chronic low-level fatigue instead of aerobic adaptation. Sure, you may think you're getting faster, but then you get injured. But the research on elite endurance athletes shows something that surprised people when it came out, that the best endurance athletes in the world, marathon runners, triathletes, cross-country skiers, do about 80% of their training at generally easy intensity, right? 20% hard, like really hard, but almost nothing in that middle area, that gray zone, right? The gray zone is where recreational runners live, right? Elite athletes know to avoid it, and they do it on purpose. So if suffering isn't the signal, what is? Well, here's the honest answer, right? In my opinion, your body needs two different things, and it needs them clearly separated, okay? Not muddled together in a permanent, moderate effort, okay? It needs general, easy aerobic work, real easy, the kind where you can hold that conversation, where you finish the run feeling like you could do more, like you could keep going, where your heart rate stays at or under your MAF ceiling the entire time. This is where your aerobic base builds, okay? Research confirms That running intensity endurance training drives greater capillary density, more oxygen delivery to your muscles than high intensity training. This is the foundation. And without it, everything else is literally built on a sandcastle. And it needs generally hard work too, though. But hard work that you can actually recover from, because the easy days are truly easy. Not hard work stacked on top of accumulated fatigue from never properly recovering. Look, I went from 8 minutes and 34 seconds per kilometer, okay, at my math heart rate in September of 2019 to 5 minutes and 34 seconds per kilometer 12 months later, right? I did a few speed sessions, 4 of them in August of that year, okay? And then I went back to really slow running because I was going to be running my ultra marathon. But I was consistent, okay? Generally easy running, building my aerobic base underneath everything else. That's not no pain, no gain promise, but that's the evidence. That's my own 10 years of experience of actually showing what works and what doesn't work. The signal you're looking for isn't pain, it's consistency. It's showing up day after day at the right effort level and letting the adaptation happen over time. Okay, I think we need to talk about cortisol, specifically because I think it's one of the most important pieces of the conversation that most running content never addresses. Every hard run, it spikes cortisol, and it's normal, and it's necessary. Cortisol mobilizes your energy, helps your muscles work hard, and it's part of the adaptation process. The problem is what happens when you never give it time to come back down. When your training load consistently exceeds your recovery capacity, okay, when every day is a gray zone effort, not truly easy, to balance it out, cortisol stays elevated. And the research links chronically elevated cortisol to increased abdominal fat storage. I got it on me right now. And immune suppression, poor sleep, persistent fatigue, and metabolic dysfunction. This is the runner who's training hard and gaining weight around the middle, despite the amount of mileage they run. This is the runner who keeps getting sick at inconvenient times. This is the runner who's motivated just by motivation just gradually drains away until running feels like a chore. We don't want to have another chore. We want to have a sport that we love to do, right? It's not a fitness problem. It's a hormonal problem caused by chronic stress. And without adequate recovery, the fix is exactly what no pain, no gain culture tells you not to do. Generally easy days, real rest, treating recovery as training rather than weakness. Your easy days aren't wasted. They were where the adaptation from your hard days actually happens. I want to zoom out for a second because I think this goes beyond just training advice. The no pain, no gain culture in running is specifically damaging to runners over 40 because it was never designed with runners over 40 in mind. It comes from a world of young athletes where recovery is literally fast, okay? Hormones are optimal and the body can absorb a lot of misguided training and still improve. That world is not our world. When we're over 40 and 50 and 60, we're running for different reasons, not just for race times, through, even though those do kind of matter from person to person, but for longevity, for mental health, for the version of ourselves that shows up better for people around us when we've been out for a run. My wife and my daughter can tell when I haven't been running, not from like a pace standard or my STRAVA results, but from my mood, from how I present myself, how present I am, from whether I'm the person that, they want to be around, who are not happy, right? That's what running does for me. And chronic injury and burnout from following a culture built from someone half my age, threatens that far more than any slow pace literally ever will. Running slow isn't giving up. Running slow isn't for people who can't, I hate the word, but hack it, right? Running slow is the thing that lets you still run at 60, at 70, at 80, whatever your age your body will allow. That's the version of this sport I'm interested in. I want to be able to run into old age. That's what I want to do. And if my cortisol is always spiking high, there's something wrong. Look, running isn't the only thing that spikes your cortisol. You get that from high stress work environments, financial constraints. There's a lot of other outside forces that kind of come into spiking cortisol. So if you're always in a fight and flight cycle, you're going to be gaining weight, and it's not a good place to be. And I've seen people go through it. I've been through it. I'm probably kind of still in that mode a little bit, right? That's where learning how to de-stress. A lot of people think going for a run can de-stress, but it still produces cortisol. So even though your cortisol is high from fight and flight, cortisol can be high just because you're running. So you're doubling it, right? You're making it even worse. So sometimes slowing down means actually going for a walk. It means maybe getting in the kayak, maybe just sitting down and doing yoga or meditation or something. Maybe that's what it is. You have to reduce the cortisol, because that, along with fats, along with eating, the comfort eating, the eating that mindfulness shouldn't happen. Look, cortisol, that's one of those things that we need to have, but we also need to have it and not be stuck in a fight and flight type of cycle. So here's what to do instead. 3 practical steps. Step 1 is define what easy actually means to you. Not easy in feeling, but easy in heart rate. Calculate your MAF heart rate, 180 minus your age. Adjust for your current condition, okay? Run with a heart rate monitor. Stay under that or at that number on every easy run. And if you have to walk to do it, go ahead and walk, right? The talk test is a quick check. It's a quick check without a monitor. If you can speak in complete sentences without breaking your breathing, right, you're in the right zone. Just like I'm doing right now. If I can do this is great. But if I can do it running, that's where you want to be, right? Step 2 is separate your easy days from your hard days completely, okay? Easy should be generally easy, not moderate. Don't get stuck in that gray zone, right? Not slightly uncomfortable easy. And you have to do hard when it needs to be hard, right? When it's generally hard. Short, controlled, with full recovery in between efforts when you're doing that. And if every run feels the same immediate effort, same medium fatigue, you're in that gray zone. And that has to change. Step 3 is treat recovery as training. Sleep is training. Rest days are training. The meal after the long run is training. Every time you see a rest day as wasted, you're misunderstanding where the adaptation actually comes from. And research on masters runners shows that most runners over 40 do best with 2 quality sessions per week, spaced 72 hours apart, not 3 or 4 like younger runners. The rest of the week should be generally easy, okay? Not more hard, right? Not more efforts cramped in because rest days feel lazy, right? Not like that. Your recovery is where fitness is built, and you got to protect it. Because if you're not protecting it, who else is going to protect it? The no pain, no gain culture had its time. Maybe served people in some contexts. But for runners over 40, recreational runners who want to still be running when they're in their 50s and 60s and 70s and 80s and beyond, look, it is the wrong framework. The research is clear. The injury statistics are clear. And if you've been running for any length of time, your own body has probably been telling you, it's been telling you the same thing. Pain is not the signal. Consistency is the signal. Easy days done right are the signal. Recovery taken seriously is the signal. That's what 10 years of running and 6 years of Maffetone method training has taught me. Not from a textbook, from getting it wrong repeatedly and finally figuring out what actually works. Look, if you want to understand exactly how to find your easy pace and start building a strong aerobic base, this video is talking about my complete MAF training guide, link below. I think that would probably be your next step. Drop a comment if you have been caught in the no pain, no gain trap and what made you realize it wasn't working. Like I always say, get out and run.